Hi, everybody. This is Todd Creager. What I do is a number of things in my career. One of them is I help couples rekindle passion and overcome blocks to intimacy and sexuality, a little bit of what I'll be talking about today. I also help couples heal from infidelity and other crises. And I also help individuals overcome or resolve or process trauma so that they could get beyond their past and live more full lives. Today, I'll be talking about the name of my talk is called Intimacy Anorexia. I borrowed this phrase from other marriage and sex therapists, but there really is, it makes sense to me. Of course, people are more familiar with anorexia in terms of not experiencing the psychological and biological need to eat. And there are those that are, I would say, intimacy anorexics in a sense, where they're not experiencing the need to be intimate with their significant partner. These people may have a lot of friends, they may have a good social life outside of that, but in terms of their primary committed relationship, there is no need, no desire to be close emotionally, spiritually, or sexually. Now, of course, intimacy anorexia leads to difficult, if not absent, sex life. And so, of course, that's all connected. When I say intimacy, I'm talking about feeling close, being vulnerable, experiencing a sense of mutual healthy dependency with each other. That's what I'm talking about. And of course, the question is, what causes it and what to do about it. And that's the topic here. So, a few notes I wrote down. Now, one of the things that I've done this a long time, and I have found that there are people that might look like they're intimacy anorexics, but upon closer scrutiny, they could be misdiagnosed. And that's a minority, but I've seen it where the person gets married or gets committed in some way to a person at a younger age for other reasons, maybe for reasons of security, or maybe they came from a chaotic home and this person is really kind and nice and they feel safe around that person. But what happens is as they get older, they start to experience. They notice that they're not wanting to be that close to this person, that they're functional together, and then sometimes what happens is when they leave each other, that they find that, and one of the person I've heard this numbers of times. God, I felt like I was dead inside, but I'm not. So I'm gonna start with the exception. This is the exception, but it does happen. It's not a totally uncommon exception where it's just not a right fit. It's nothing against the other person. It's nothing against that person themselves. It's just that when they met, it was for different reasons than to be open and alive and really connected. And sometimes, like, we're not going to just pick someone randomly, say every single person is going to work for us. There is a certain chemistry that drives the desire for getting to know each other, be closer to each other, intimacy with each other. So that could happen, and I've seen it happen. However, most of the time when I see this intimacy avoidance with a couple, one of the partners, sometimes it's both, but usually it's one, really has an aversion to vulnerability. They have an aversion to intimacy. And there's a variety of possibilities for that. One is that they were possibly sexually abused or mentally abused or physically abused. And when that happens, they develop walls around themselves to protect themselves. And those walls are like the brain is wired that way to have those walls to they adapted to this abuse by protecting, and then they fall in love and the protections leave for a little while. But as this newness, the honeymoon stage, moves on to being a more of what you call attached relationship, those old stuff comes up, and now there's a lot of protection, and the person begins to get busy and focus on many other things, but definitely not the partner. And it's an unconscious, maybe it's semi-conscious, but oftentimes not totally conscious, avoidance of being vulnerable, because when they were vulnerable when they were little, they got negative consequences for it. Another thing is that you've come from a family of origin where there wasn't closeness. It was a very disengaged family. It's what your brain got used to. Similar to when you've been abused, but in this case, you just don't know it. You just don't know it. It's not that you're protecting yourself. It's just not part of your normal experience. And again, the brain wires in a way to adapt to that situation. So you just don't know it. And again, sometimes these people, when you fall in love, the hormones and chemicals take over. But once they subside, there's no inner drive for that. Some people, they have found, and this could happen when they're adolescents or young adults, but addiction to porn, and they do a lot of sex by themselves. I'm not saying that that's never okay. I'm not saying that at all, but it becomes more of an addiction or a compulsion because it's easy and it's risk averse. You're not really risking getting judged, and the person develops this habit of addiction to porn or sexual behavior with sex with others, maybe outside of the marriage. There can be, again, back to the family of origin, a lack of attachment to one parent or both parents. And again, it's that protection. So it really does come down to either protection or it's just not part of their psychological apparatus to be close. They got through life being disengaged. So in all these things, avoidance is at the core. Avoidance, whether we are aware we're avoiding or we're not aware we're avoiding. But we're avoiding an aspect of life that is so rich and so important. And that is to learn how to become healthfully dependent on each other, to be vulnerable with each other, to be open. There's a quality of not being overly dependent or needy, but there is a quality of I soften with you. I let you in to my world with words, with my heart, with touch. So when you're stuck in this intimacy anorexic relationship, if you're the person who is at the effect of it, it can be very, very painful. If you're constantly being disconnected. Now, sometimes what will happen is it's in the form of just disconnection and you're on your own a lot and there's no closeness and you just slip into these roles. Sometimes there can be a lot of blaming and you feel criticized a lot. That happens too. And that's oftentimes an unconscious way of staying distant from each other. Sometimes that other person, since they have a hard time being intimate with you and they've learned to protect themselves, they're not very intimate with themselves. They don't know themselves. They don't take a good look at themselves, really. I mean, I just thought of this now as I'm talking, but there's the topic I've talked about a lot with gaslighting. Gaslighters, people that make you feel like you're the problem, they don't have an intimacy with themselves either, if you think about it. They don't have the ability, the courage, the willingness to look inside of themselves and go, oh my God, I'm scared. And instead of noticing I'm scared or I feel insecure, that what I do is I just try to be above it all and I make you the bad one. People have some personality disorders, like narcissistic personality disorder. They're not intimate with themselves. Because if they were intimate with themselves, they find some things out that were painful. So there's an avoidance. People with personality disorders, it is a whole life of defense. So it's really all about protection in one way or the other, or I just not even aware of it. I've seen people that they just don't know it. They don't know what it's like to be intimate. And they have to learn it and they start to develop. It's like the first time you've eaten a new food. Oh, this is good. And I have found that those situations can be not quite as challenging as the intimacy anorexic, who really is really living a life of protection against one person who is their significant other. So we do need to, so again, yeah, so from the point of view of the person who's at the effect of it, they could feel criticized a lot. They take on they're blamed, so they might go around a little unsure themselves, but they just feel so alone and so isolated. From the perspective of the intimacy anorexic, they're oftentimes just um, feeling what they feel. They feel like they're a victim because maybe, like I said, many of them have been victims, and they're really into protecting themselves and projecting out into the world that you're a scary person or you're a dangerous person or you're not a caring person, and they will act accordingly, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, something I've talked about for years. So what do we do about all this, right? If you fall into one of these categories where you're, I would say, this intimacy anorexic, or this person who just, and it's hard sometimes to see it that way when you're in that stage. Just like people that have anorexia nervosa oftentimes have a difficult time seeing it. They experience what's going on as normal for them. But you start to see enough signs, hopefully. You start to take a look. You listen to this video. There's many others, I'm sure, out there and books on it and all that. And you want to get educated on it so that you start to see there's a problem. It goes from what pre-contemplation is a stage of change where a person doesn't even realize it's a problem. And suddenly you move into contemplation where you go, well, maybe I do have a problem. Maybe I don't realize that I live a life of walls. I live a life of walls, and maybe I'm missing out on something here. But you see, the price that a person pays when they've lived with walls, and then they begin to lower the walls. The price they pay is fear and vulnerability. And there's a part of them that feels like they're going to get abused again if they were abused, or something bad's going to happen, or they'll be abandoned again. Which is why you really can't do this alone. You really need a professional such as myself to help you with it. Really do. It's one of those situations that I do think it helps to read books and watch videos and get educated so that you could see it and understand a little bit more and see yourself. And the person who's the person who is the partner of the person who's intimacy anorexic also read books and look at videos, but also needs the professional help so that they don't continue to be part of that dance that continues the same pattern. So you really need help in this case. So that's number one. That's the number one thing to overcome it, is have someone like myself to help you through it. Not all marriage therapists can help you through it either, because some marriage therapists, they don't go deep enough. They don't get to the core. They give you a bunch of little exercises to do and think that, and send you on your way, and then it doesn't work, because there are deeper reasons for that. Sometimes I work with the person and just help them process some old trauma, which then helps them free up to at least begin to experience what their capacity is for more intimacy. So there's lots of things that I do, and not just me, but people that get the depth of these issues and where they come from. So that's the most important thing. The other thing I want to say in terms of overcoming this challenge, besides getting professional help for it, is you need to decide that life isn't just about being comfortable, the person who's the intimacy anorexic. And that the person who's on the partner of that needs to recognize that their needs are legitimate, that maybe they start to doubt that maybe they were asking for too much. I've seen that before. I've heard that before with partners. Well, maybe I'm asking too much. Maybe that's just the way marriage is, or that's the way committed relationships are after a period of time. No, no. As a person who wrote the book, The Long Hot Marriage, you could have a long hot marriage, or a long hot cohabitation if you're not married. You could have that. So you want to continue to make a decision that it is possible, number one, and that it's important to sometimes be uncomfortable. The person who's had a hard time being vulnerable, who's lived their life with the walls, needs to realize that there's something they're missing, even if they're not sure what they're missing. That you live your life like a social experiment, and you explore what might be there, because when you are not vulnerable and you don't allow someone to be there for you, you are missing out. And I don't want that for you. I want you a more robust, fuller life for you. So you do whatever it takes to overcome your walls, overcome your fear. You make that decision and you go forward. And you practice it. You do something different. I'm just saying, again, even beyond the professional help, you ask yourself, what is something I'm avoiding? That's a great question to ask. How can I get closer to my partner? Maybe I could ask a question about my partner to know that partner better. Or maybe I can say, what do I not share in myself? Start small, incrementally. What is something that I could share? How would I speak if I trusted this person? That's hard to do. I get it. That's why, like I said, it's hard to do this on your own because we are survival machines and we do things to survive, which sometimes interferes with our capacity to fully enjoy life. But if you could ask that, what is it that I want to share that maybe if I did trust you, which I know I don't, what would I share? How would I even approach you differently? What if I imagined something different, that you were there for me in ways nobody else was in my past, even if you haven't been there before? Because maybe one of the reasons you haven't been there before is because I've trained you that it's not rewarding, because I kept pushing you away. So anyway, I'm working from both ends of it, either partner. But the bottom line is that you want to stop avoiding. You want to address the issues as a couple, and again, address the issues probably with a skilled marriage and sex therapist. So it's a big topic. I could talk about this for a long time, but I did want to share that much with you. And hopefully, if you fall into this category, either partner, or if you know people that are, please pass this video on. But um, definitely, I wish the best for you, and I hope you do something about it because you can. This is Todd Creager, making the world safe for love.